So firstly, Burton Street, pedestrian plaza. This is the parameters of the plaza. It's roughly 647 metres squared in size, the plaza. And this is the scope of work that we're looking at, which is highlighted there in pink and also hatched along the sides of Burton Street as well. This is the existing arrangement of the plaza. So this shows you what's existing, or before actually what was the trial plaza. We'll talk about the trial plaza, but this shows you the existing arrangement of Burton Street as it was before it was closed. The extent of the outdoor dining areas, the tree planting, the raised pedestrian crossing, and the outdoor, the actual size of the outdoor dining areas that are currently licensed to operators in Burton Street. The existing condition, I think it speaks a lot for itself, and I'll talk a little bit about the original master plan that was adopted by council. But look, it's recognised that Kirribilli as a village by council is an iconic village, one of the more iconic villages in North Sydney, and it hasn't had an upgrade for quite a number of years. And the last significant upgrade that was done in Kirribilli was in the late 1980s and 1990s, which is what you see in front of you now. That's the old palette of public domain streetscape furniture, paving and materials that were used during that time. And it really hasn't had a refresh since the 1990s, the mid-1990s. So it's definitely time for a refresh of Kirribilli as a whole, and that was the purpose of the master plan. And the master plan was funded initially, just the master plan, which provides the framework for the upgrade, was funded out of the special rate variation, the SRV, that council introduced in 2018-19. So we had money then to put towards developing a master plan, which we then put on public exhibition, and that was adopted by council in February 2020. So these projects and the master plan have been around in council's delivery program since 2020 and before. So 2019-20 financial year is when this project started to get into council's delivery program, and the suite of projects that fall out of that, these two being those projects, have been funded since then to get implemented. And I'll talk a little bit about the trial, because we were lucky to get funding from the Streets as Shared Spaces program from the state government right at the time that we were putting together and exhibiting the Kirribilli master plan. So it was just lucky timing that we had a document to show the state government our intention. And they said, well, why don't you, and we said, we're happy to pilot a few of the projects as, and this was also happening during COVID as well, as part of the Streets as Shared Spaces program. So we're lucky to get funding from the state government for that. So that's just some background. I think everyone knows the existing village is looking tired. It needs a significant refresh, right up from the paving through to the streetscape furniture, through to the lighting, through to the landscaping. Some more reference images of what it currently looks like. I'll talk to you a little bit. This, you can see here what Burton Street looked like before, and also when we started to introduce the trial plaza, and it was a trial plaza, just to see what it worked, how it worked from a pedestrian, traffic, and also from a business point of view. Would it actually work as we sort of envisaged in the master plan? And I think everyone knows that because we couldn't do a proper shared zone where you actually, we couldn't do a permanent solution where you actually have to pave curb to curb when you do a proper shared zone and close the road, we had to try and make it obvious that Burton Street was closed. And the consultants decided a good way to do that was through a vibrant paint scheme and colour scheme, which, as we know, has received various views about it. But that was always intentional to make it very obvious that this street was closed, that this street was a public space. And the last thing we wanted to do is to have cars trying to re-enter Burton Street, which they've been doing for 150 years. So that was the intent behind the colour scheme. Make it obvious, make it bright, make it vibrant, but understand the whole way along it is only a temporary. Design, because it also had to be, if the community didn't want to proceed with it, it also had to be easily reversed, and removing paint and planter boxes and things like that is much easier to do than if we'd done it in a more permanent manner. Just some images of the pilot scheme, which has been now in place for 12 months. Yes. Over. Yeah. So it's holding up reasonably well, but it's certainly not the permanent design, because that's the purpose of tonight's briefing. So here are some, is this the existing, or is this option one?
Option one.
Yeah, I just can't read the top there. So this is a plan view of option one. And what we're proposing to do in option one is to obviously retain as much of the outdoor dining and seating area as possible, use council's paving palette of materials that's been designed for Kirribilli, the Kirribilli as a whole. So this is refreshing all of Kirribilli, is using our standard paving palette of materials. It shows the new street tree locations, and it also shows the key part of this design is that it shows an open central spine through Burton Street that allows people to walk right through the middle. It's accessible from Broughton Street to Humphrey Place, right through the middle, but also down the sides, right adjacent to the shops, so that it's fully accessible all the way through. The dining bays have been set out and delineated with seating platforms. So you can see up there, it's off-form concrete with seating opportunities that face inwards to the space, but at the same time, those seating areas act as the barrier, if you like, or the delineation of the outdoor dining areas. We're also proposing to keep some of the temporary elements here, so that we do have, and this is based on the feedback we've received, the things that people really liked. So the catenary lighting and decorative lighting is all being retained. A lot of the landscaping is all being retained and reused in this area. So they're elements that we will keep from the old temporary design and reuse. There's some savings there for us, but they're also the things that people said that they liked in the consultation. That's just an artist impression that shows you that central spine through Burton Street. It's fully accessible for people with prams, strollers, wheelchairs, people of all accessibility abilities, and also some of the standard new council light fittings, the catenary lighting, the street trees, the soft landscaping elements, but also some options for the seating elements. And you can see there that that's off-form concrete with some timber treatments on top to make it comfortable as opposed to concrete. But you can also see there in the background, as you look towards the west, the Burton Street tunnel and the clear sight lines that this creates. So this is very much an open option for both pedestrians, but also people who want to stay and dwell and go to the cafes and restaurants in Burton Street.
I think we should highlight that how all the blue scheme, it's the colors are going, that's not staying at all. So all the blue, it's being removed from the permanent solution.
All that's right, Diana. All the colours on the roadway, but also the coloured elements, the pots and all of that will be removed, and they'll be reused somewhere else by council in the future. That just shows you at night. It's a nighttime shot. Lots of people have told us that they really love the lighting down there. It's a big attractor, and one of the key objectives, and I'll talk a little bit about this when I'm answering the questions we've got, but one of the key attractors is to make Kirribilli Village a destination for people who come from all over Sydney, who visit Sydney, but particularly people who come, say, from the Harbour Bridge, coming across the bridge, which a lot of people do to come and see Sydney, and have a really great experience when they arrive into Kirribilli. And that's both at night and during the day. We want them not just to come down those steps or the lift and look at Kirribilli and then go, oh, let's go back up those stairs and lift and get back to the rocks. We want the people to stay in Kirribilli, experience it, and enjoy their stay, because Kirribilli is one of the most beautiful harbourside suburbs in Sydney. So there is no reason for them not to stay in Kirribilli unless we're not delivering what their expectations are. And we hope that we are doing that. Another view of Burton Street, option 1, as you look down to the east. Look, the tree selection, it's open. We're suggesting jacarandas. It's certainly not locked in stone, but jacarandas were suggested because of the reference to the nearby Willoughby Street and McDougall Street. So, you know, and there are jacarandas in other parts of Kirribilli as well. But look, we're certainly not wedded to any of the tree selections. There has to be some consistency in the tree selections, not just for here, but for the rest of the street trees in Kirribilli. So really that's going to be our guide as to street tree selection. Again, what that space looks like at night. Hopefully we make it look as inviting and as attractive as this throughout Kirribilli. Now, option 2, the key difference, and I know for a lot of people it'll be hard to see, but the key difference in this option is that the roadway, the old roadway, is terraced, okay, down the middle, and the terracing creates flat platforms that are more suitable to things like tables and chairs and seating for possible future alfresco dining expansion if people want to take that up. So these terraces down the centre of Burton Street provide that opportunity. You still have full access up and down between Humphrey Place and Broughton Street through the under awning area of the footpath that's immediately adjacent to the shops. So that footpath will be graded and fully accessible so that people who have prams, strollers, wheelchairs can get between the terraces, but also can get between Broughton Street and Humphrey Place. Very similar in terms of the paving materials and the elements of streetscape furniture elements have some commonality as well. Again, the paving material is chosen because it's the consistent paving material that's been selected throughout Kirribilli, and we've already started to roll that out. You would see this paving down at the Botanist, just down from the Kirribilli Hotel. We've already started to roll this out, and that is intended to go all the way down Broughton Street, both sides, but also down Fitzroy, Burton, Bligh, and all the other streets that come off Broughton Street, because that's what was identified in the master plan. So that shows you clearly the terracing. You can see the change in level there. As I said, this option is really quite similar to option 1, except for this major difference being flatter areas, flatter terraces down through Burton Street. There is quite a change in level. I don't know the exact metrics, but from Broughton Street to Humphrey Place, there is quite a significant change in level. So to make things flat, you do have to do this terracing to create a flat area that would be suitable to put tables and chairs on. Again, showing you at night. The other major difference in that is this option also doesn't have the seating bleachers or concrete off-form seating that was shown in option 1. This is more open for that because, as I said, if we needed to expand tables and chairs or outdoor operators wanted to expand tables and chairs, it gives them more of a, I guess, a more unlimited opportunity to do that. Again, a view looking to the east, and you can see there it is. It's an open option. I've spoken about the tree selection. Nothing's locked in stone in terms of tree selection and landscaping. So we're more than happy to hear suggestions from everyone about what would be appropriate street trees. and again, what that looks like at night. So now Bligh Street, which we've trialled as a shared zone, not a proper shared zone, as we would like to do, as we have to do shared zones, which incorporate what I call flush paving, curb to curb. So it makes it easy for pedestrians to access between both sides of the street, but it also makes it very clear to drivers, people in cars, that this is a pedestrian area, pedestrian space. The idea with shared zone is to try and make them look as least as possible like a road, and make drivers feel that way so that they understand they're in an environment where they share it with pedestrians. Again, this is what you've currently got, or before actually the trial. Bligh Street is a narrow street. It's got the church on one side, and then on the other side there's some retail and some cafes, and then you've got limited street furniture, but also very limited footpath access through Bligh Street. I think most people walk on the road on Bligh Street anyway. So it was logical to make this a shared zone and make it more pedestrian friendly to use for everyone. That just shows you the existing environment, the existing character of Bligh Street. Council's done some landscaping works on Burton Street. Of course, all of that would stay and get enhanced. We're not proposing any changes to a lot of the new landscaping that's gone in. But what we are proposing is additional landscaping and street trees and planting, which you'll see in a sec. Again, the same principle applied to Bligh Street about why we chose a bold, or the consultants chose a bold colour scheme. It was a fast, easy way to make it very obvious that this was a shared zone and you were in a changed environment. So paint is reversible. Paint was quick and easy to implement, and it makes it very obvious that this is a changed roadway environment. We also put in some planter boxes to try and make it look a lot more soft in terms of landscaping. And there was some experimentation with the lighting as well on those planter boxes. And that was this is the temporary arrangement. So like Burton Street, we're proposing literally to pave over this, and you won't see it again. It goes, it'll be removed or paved over, so you won't see it. And this is the option 1 for Bligh Street. And again, we're using our palette of materials for Kirribilli, which is the paving that you can see there. And if you really want to see it in real life, it's the paving that's outside the Botanist down in Kirribilli at the corner of Willoughby Street. And here you can see more planter boxes are proposed, street tree planting. The main difference here is the paving. We're using an interlocker paver that goes across the old, still there, the Bligh Street, so that you have flush paving literally boundary to boundary. And also you can see there in the plan, there's bollards which delineate where pedestrians can walk if they want to. They're also more than welcome to walk on the road, but also it keeps the cars off the footpath. If a car was to veer towards the footpath, there are bollards there to stop it. And that shows you
option 1.
Option 1, the paving material. We're talking about using a similar paver and paver type that would be used on the footpaths in the roadway. So from a visual perspective, it looks pretty much like a footpath, except it's a shared zone. As I said, the landscaping at the intersection would be enhanced in the planter beds, and we're proposing planter boxes and street trees. Only difference between that option and this option is we're using a slightly different paver in the middle there, the interlocker I talked about. You can see there it's in a herringbone pattern. It's a different paving material, and really that just makes it in some way clearer that that's where the cars go. They go on that. It's a strengthened paver, but really that's the only difference in this option. Artist's impression of what it would look like during the day. As you can see there, it makes quite a difference when you do flush paving. makes it a lot more accessible for pedestrians to use the space. It also makes the footpaths feel a lot wider in terms of people who need to use the footpath and access with prams and strollers and wheelchairs. So that's the whole idea. You can see there the planter boxes and also the street trees. Again, we're open to suggestions about species, and none of that's locked in at this stage. What it looks like at night, we're proposing that the street trees would have lighting. We're also proposing there be LED lighting under the planter boxes to make it very clear where the roadway was and where the pedestrian areas was. We're also proposing to do some of our street lighting in this street as well and upgrade that. So the goosenecks that are currently there would be upgraded with different lights. So a bit about the finishes palette, and this applies to both. These are the pavers we'd be proposing to use. They're a Pebblecrete paver. And you can see these, as I said, down outside the botanist, but you also see a lot of this up in Neutral Bay in the Military Road corridor where we've rolled this out there. The reason we've chosen these pavers, the dark coloured ones, is that they absorb the grime and the dirt a lot better than the orange ones or the pink coloured ones. And that's what we've found while we've been rolling this out for about 4 years, 5 years now, is that those dark pavers, and then we bleed it out with a pattern of lighter pavers as you get away from the boundary, as you go towards the curb. So we break it up in terms of a pattern to make it interesting. It's not just bland grey or charcoal, but they do absorb the grime and dirt a lot better than the current paving that's down there, which is a pink sort of paver, but also the other pink pavers that you might have seen in other parts of North Sydney. So then we've got the interlockers, if you see there on the far left, that's the sort of paver that we would use in the centre of Bligh Street, but we're proposing in a charcoal colour, again a dark colour, to absorb the muck. So that's the paving, and of course we have to have tactile pavers, tactile indicators at all the thresholds. The elements on the left there is the old palette of streetscape furniture from the 1980s, early 1990s. Most of that, particularly the lights, have now reached literally the end of their useful life. They're over 25 years old, 30 years old, some of them. We can't get parts for them anymore. So that's why you'll see when the shades or the lamp hoods get bashed up, that the best thing we can do is try and straighten them out and repair them. We can't replace them because it's very difficult now with something that's over 30 years old to get parts for it. So the lights have to be upgraded. A standard light is what you can see there on the right-hand side, which is the black light. That's the standard now streetscape light that we use. And you can see that pretty much in most village centres in North Sydney, in Neutral Bay, Crow's Nest. This has all been rolled out. There's different lights for the North Sydney CBD Centre because that's a different palette of materials altogether. The different seating, bins and bollards, all standard council streetscape furniture as part of our public design style manual, is all standard. It certainly doesn't mean that we can't add things on to the furniture elements if we have to. So if we need to add on banner poles, we can do that. If we need to hang on hanging baskets of living colour, these furniture elements have that ability, have that capability to do that. It's just adding on fixtures and bits and pieces that are all available as part of these particular streetscape products. So I'll let Diana talk to you a little bit now. We're talking about the next steps or the steps of the consultation process. So I'll let you, Diana, talk about how we're going to continue this conversation with the community.
So we are receiving feedback into the 14th of November. Everyone is welcome to go online and fill out the feedback form that it's already there. We are also receiving feedback via email or mail. You can send us a free form feedback as well. Can you please just go to the next one? So basically our submission form in the page one is just the standard information, just the understanding of the council access to information policy and all the privacy statements for us to be able to collect the information from the submitters. Just let's go to the next one. The submission details. This is when we ask which is the preferred option. Street, then Bligh Street. The third question includes an opportunity for the submitters to provide additional comments about each site. And then the third question, it's about Bligh Street, additional comments, and then at the fourth question, you can also provide us with additional general comments. So not only about the options we have put out there for you to comment, but you can also bring us ideas. We are open to listen to more general feedback.
Yeah, so as Diana, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, you're more than welcome to tick, I just like option one as it is, or I like option two. And look, to be honest, quite a people have done that from the submissions we've seen so far. But you're also more than welcome to say, I like option one, but without jacaranda trees, yes. Or I like option two with council to do a different seating arrangement, whatever. So you are more than welcome to, as I said, it's the arrangement of the options is still open to how we do a preferred and final yes. Design. So
and the submission form, it's been set up quite openly. You can even upload any relevant documents that you think you have any drawings that you think are good ideas, or you can submit it as well on the section 5. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
A little bit more about this. The
page 3. It's about the personal information, contact details of the submitters.
Yeah.
So, the key dates. So we are today, the 11th of October, in an online information session. On the 18th of October, we will have the Kirribilli Streetscape Committee as well, and when we will present.
We'll be presenting this presentation again, yeah.
And on the 8th of November, we will have the design workshop. This will be facilitated by the council staff, and we will have the design consultant to support us there. And all the community is welcome to join us. And we will put more detailed information on how you can register to come to that session on the website. And again, as I mentioned before, the feedback closes on the 14th of November.
Thanks, Diana. So, as I said, next steps, that's the consultation. After the consultation period, we want to get a report up to council in November to say this is the outcome of the consultation. I'm hoping in that report we can say this is what everyone liked, this is a preferred option, and then we can put that preferred option out to tender and construction documentation through November through to January, and then in February commence the tender period, because as you'd all understand, that's the sort of Christmas period that we'd be doing tender and construction, the documentation. We wouldn't be able to do any tender procurement of contractors during that period because they're on holidays, but then we hopefully would start that in February and then have a 2-month procurement period and be able to let a tender for construction in April next year. And the construction, we would carefully manage that because obviously we understand the impacts that would have on not just the retailers, but the schools, residents, and all the other key stakeholders in Kirribilli. So at this stage, I would say for Burton Street, you'd be looking at a 2 to 3 month construction period. And Bligh Street, which we would hopefully do at the same time, but we'd also stagger that work so that we didn't have parallel and concurrent impacts in April, and that would be possibly a 1 month. Bligh Street's a lot simpler, 1 month construction period. So that's the end of the presentation. What I'll do now is go through a number of the questions that we've received so far that have been submitted before tonight's presentation. And also now's your chance, your opportunity to be sending in any other questions that you have. And Gemma, our engagement officer here, will receive those questions on
chat,
online, yeah, and then she'll bring them to us or send them to us, and we'll attempt to answer those questions that we're getting live from you now. But while you're doing that, I'm going to go through a couple of the questions that we've received prior to tonight's meeting. I don't know who these have come from, so they've just been sent through. So the first question I have is, can the council articulate its design principles for Kirribilli? The existing plaza is offensive in its colour scheme and lighting. It is directly opposite to the Sydney Harbour Bridge, an icon, but Kirribilli design does not reference this at all. The new designs just seem to build upon what is there, which is not great, what you're trying to achieve. So I think what I pointed out very clearly is that the designs you see there now are temporary. They're always designed to be temporary designs, and the reason for the bright colour schemes was that we were doing a changeover from what was a historical previous use of a roadway into a pedestrian area. And we from a safety perspective, but also from a presentation perspective, we wanted to make it obvious that there was a change afoot. It was always intended, and I think you'll see this in the Kirribilli master plan, that the designs for those spaces were very different to the temporary design. So in terms of the principles, the design principles for Kirribilli, the master plan on page 8, and that document, that's this document that was adopted by council in 2020, does articulate clearly. They call them issues and opportunities, but they're actually design principles. They're the design principles for Kirribilli, and they're articulated on page 8 of that document, but they're also articulated in the council report that went to the February 2021 council meeting, which was on the outcomes of the consultation for Kirribilli. And if you go to the council report, it's also on our website, item 8.9 of the February 2021 meeting. That report includes very specifically what is in the background section. What it says is the key objectives of the master plan, what the key objectives of the master plan are. And there's 11 of them, but I'll just read a few of them out for you. So some of the key objectives of the master plan was to upgrade the public domain of this iconic Lower North Shore Village Centre and its associated streetscapes and public spaces, while celebrating the unique harbourside setting and character and preserving the existing status of the village as one of the 10 most livable suburbs in Sydney. Another objective, create a new and contemporary public domain for Kirribilli Village Centre that supports the needs of local businesses and enables a vibrant economy to prosper both during the day and night. Create a public domain that embraces the principles of placemaking, and I've talked a little bit about placemaking and making Kirribilli a destination, which is collaborative with the people who live and visit in Kirribilli and around Kirribilli. Another objective, identify opportunities for public art and decorative lighting to celebrate the iconic heritage features of this unique harbourside village. And there is some reference to that in the master plan as itself, as celebrating and highlighting the abutments to the Harbour Bridge, which is obviously a major feature of the Kirribilli village, but also celebrating Kirribilli Village's character as and this was originally as part of the master plan, is what the name of Kirribilli actually stands for, which was its Aboriginal word for fishing place or fishing place. So, you know, we wanted to celebrate the original custodians of Kirribilli at the time. So that's an objective. Improve accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists. I'm just skimming over these. Provide designs that reflect the innovative and creative use of public space, and create, this was a specific objective, create a pedestrian plaza in Burton and Bligh Street as part of the heart of Kirribilli, and identify other areas in Kirribilli to increase public open space to improve a pedestrian amenity. So that's a very quick snapshot of the master plan objectives, and that's in the council report. It's also reflected in the master plan.
Thank you.
Why does council, this is another question, I'm not sure where it came from. Why does the council like fairy lights rather than more elegant lighting in keeping with the beautiful Harbour Bridge lighting? We're happy to explore fairy lights. We did get, during the consultation and during the trial, the consultation that was done on the two trial areas, Bligh and Burton, a lot of feedback about people really liking the fairy lights. So we got a lot of positive feedback. People really liked it. And we have used it in other village centres. So we've used it in Crow's Nest. People like it up there at Ernest Place. We've used it in Cremorne Plaza, and Cremorne people like it there. We can always do it better. I'm not saying that our solution, and you'll see it in various councils throughout Sydney, they all do it differently to different standards, to different expectations. We don't have a standard decorative lighting palette, but we certainly can tweak the decorative lighting or the fairy lighting that celebrates these spaces to be more in keeping with the heritage of the area. But it is an effective way to make a public space feel safe, vibrant, and attractive. Yes, we can look at more sophisticated ways to do it. And as I said before, there was in the master plan some quite bold schemes to celebrate the Harbour Bridge abutments with lighting. And decorative lighting, I think you can also view it as, in some ways, an element of public art, depending on how it's done. So that's my answer to that one. There's a third question here. What is the obsession with jacarandas? They are native to South America, and while McDougall Street is famous for its trees, they shouldn't define the suburb. They are really dangerous, and their slimy flowers only look good for a short period. We should be using evergreen natives which provide shade and are relevant to the area. As I said, we're not wedded to the street trees. Council does have a street tree master plan that was developed and has been developed by our Open Space and Environmental Service Division that identifies street trees that can be used, not must be used, but can be used in all the village centres. Jacarandas are one of those, but there's also other trees that they've identified are appropriate for Kirribilli. So we're not wedded to jacarandas. As I said, as you would all know, being local residents, there is already a couple of species of different street trees throughout Kirribilli, and we're happy to try and tie in what's there. Or if people really want jacarandas, you know, then that's up to what we hear back from the consultation. But we're certainly, as I said, not wedded to street tree species selection at this point in time. What will the colour scheme be of the proposed plazas? Well, I think I've covered that in the presentation tonight, and we've got slides all on that. What you see in the slides is an accurate representation of the palette of materials, paving, streetscape furniture, lighting, all the rest of it, of what would actually be built. There's no smoke and daggers there or secrets. That is what it will look like. So I think I've covered that off in the presentation tonight. How will your design reflect the character statement for Kirribilli? Well, I think the Kirribilli character statement is reflected in the Kirribilli master plan document. You can find it there. You can also find it as described in the council report that went to council. The character statement was the basis for the brief that we gave to the consultants when we said you need to come up with a new public domain palette and design for Kirribilli. And I think everyone understands the character statement or the key principles of the character statement of Kirribilli, and that is it's an iconic harbourside suburb located amongst some very important heritage features and architectural features, starting with the Harbour Bridge, but also finishing with the North Sydney Olympic Pool and Luna Park. So it is, and also the architecture of Kirribilli is very important. So that was considered quite carefully in the formulation of the master plan. Not in the temporary designs that you see for Burton and Bligh streets, for the reasons I've explained. But if you go back to the framework, the grassroots, the master plan, it was considered in that. Okay, another question. We agreed to the permanent closure, but the design has to be heritage, historical, in keeping with the bridge, plus has to be clean. Yeah, look, I agree, but I think that the design, the permanent design, which is again very different to the temporary design, is in keeping with the heritage character of Kirribilli, and also with the master plan, which took that heritage aspect into consideration when it said that this is the sort of look and feel for the overall village that we think is appropriate for Kirribilli. So I don't think that we've ignored the heritage, or we haven't paid homage to the heritage importance of Kirribilli. I think it's there. How it can be further celebrated and further recognised is through additional elements that we can put into these designs, to the concepts that celebrate the heritage aspects of Kirribilli. So there is still that opportunity to put what I call another layer of heritage, if you like, interpretation or heritage elements that celebrate Kirribilli in these concept designs. Okay, last question I had was, why are members of Kirribilli community not included in the consult category for all stages of development?
Well, they have been included. They have been included. Yes. Or the consultation with the local community is part of the strategy in all stages of this project. And as per the project, the specific community engagement strategy. We are currently consulting the community and looking for their feedback to inform the final design. And during the construction period, we will engage again with the community and especially also the business owners, and we will keep all the community informed about the progress of the project. So we will keep the Kirribilli community informed, and we will consult when relevant. Yeah. As per the strategy.
Yeah, and I think it's a population of 3,000 in Kirribilli, residential population. We're happy to hear from everyone. There's also other key stakeholders in that community that we're also directly going to be contacting. That's the schools, the businesses in the area as well. So, you know, there's other key stakeholders that we are going to directly consult with. So that's the end of the pre-submitted questions. Yes. I'm now going to ask Diana and Gemma to say 5 minutes left as well. I'm now going to ask Diana.
We can respond some of the questions that are asked on chat, and if we don't have time to finalize all the questions, we will respond to them on the Q&A section of the Your Say website. So first question is, can council remove the underutilized phone booth on Burton Street?
Yes, I know the one you're talking about.
Can we?
We can't remove it, but we can certainly ask Telstra to remove it, and we're more than happy to raise that with Telstra as part of this process. And if you put submissions in asking for that, that gives us more grunt
Yeah.
to go back to Telstra and say, we've done consultation. They want you to relocate your phone booth. So thank you for that question.
Okay, we have another, we have some feedback on the submission form. On the feedback screen, it looked like it was required to tick either option 1 or option 2. If this is not tick, then it won't allow the submitter to continue. That's a good feedback, and we will amend the submission form to allow to respond none of the options, so you can continue filling out the submission form. And we will fix it first thing tomorrow.
Thank you for that question.
Yes,
Yeah, we'll fix that.
Another question, how is option 2 for Burton in compliance with standards for access by those with limited mobility? Yeah,
so as I explained when we went through option 2, the design for the footpaths under awning, so out of the weather, will be compliant with Australian standards for disabled access. So people will still, as they do right now, I'm not sure if it's compliant now though, but as they do right now, use the footpath adjacent to the shops to go between Broughton and Humphrey Place. As you'd appreciate, they've been doing that for 100 years because Burton Street is a road. You can't, or you wouldn't encourage people in wheelchairs or strollers to use Burton Street as the roadway to go between Broughton and Humphrey Place. So in option 2, I would say it's pretty much the existing situation that you have or have had right now with people using the footpath adjacent to the shops, and that will be designed to meet all disability and access codes. We'll make sure it complies with those codes.
There's another question. Was the close of Bligh to traffic given consideration? Did we ever think about closing Bligh to traffic?
Yes, it was, and that's still an issue that we can look at in the future. But closing Bligh Street, we would have to find another way to get back onto Broughton Street, and that would mean channeling traffic down. Is it Kirribilli?
Yeah, yes, and what it has to be.
Yeah, it was looked at, and it from a traffic perspective, particularly facilitating the peak traffic during school pick up and drop off, we would have to carefully consider where those cars would be redirected to if we closed Bligh Street. But in simple answer to your question, yes, it was considered. Yes, it is sort of an obvious thing to do, but it does have significant traffic impacts for the other surrounding streets in Kirribilli.
Another question from the chat. How do we intend to ensure the safety of pedestrians when sharing a road with cars in Bligh Street?
Yeah, so when we design a shared zone, the safety of pedestrians is pretty much ensured because we reduce the speed limit of cars to 10 k's an hour. That's effectively walking pace. So in all shared zones that are rolled out both here in North Sydney but all across metropolitan Sydney, the speed limit is 10, and we enforce that with signage, but more importantly, we enforce that with the physical ramp up into the shared zone, which slows the car right down. And guess what's right at that ramp as they go into the shared zone? There's a big sign that says 10K shared zone, pedestrians use this space. So that's proven to work. It's part of the Ausroad standards. It's what Transport for New South Wales say you must do. And that will ensure that pedestrians are not going to be injured, especially if with cars travelling through there. I'm not saying I can rule out 100% no one's ever going to be hit, but when the speed limit's down to 10 k's an hour, that's a safe speed for cars and pedestrians to mix in.
And we have the last question from the chat, and your option 2 of Burton Street shows planting across the Broughton Street edge. I thought that part of the original plan was to widen the pedestrian crossing over Broughton Street to be across the whole Burton Street from the flight center to Woolies. So
But it's now a public footpath, it's not a crossing.
The crossing to the other side of Burton Street.
Oh, to the Ennis Road
Yes.
side.
Yes. Have you decided not to do this pedestrian crossing space? It was part of the master plan, but it's outside the scope of this stage of the project. That's something that we might explore in the future.
Yeah.
But it's outside the scope of works of this stage. And that's to do with the lighting. We don't want to stop the project.
But doing this project doesn't rule that out in the future. So it doesn't compromise that particular pedestrian crossing from going ahead. I think, as Diana said, that's a little bit complicated because it involves a complete redesign of that intersection with the lights. And that would take quite a bit of approval to get done. Whereas we want to get this done as quickly as possible, but we also want to get it done in a way that the community accepts and likes and can be proud of going forward. So we certainly want to get it right, because what we do in Burton and Bligh Street does set the tone for the rest of Kirribilli and what we roll out in Kirribilli. So we do want to get this right, and we do want to get the community on board to be happy with what's being done, because we're going to be rolling out this standard, if you like, this quality to the rest of the village centre. We just received more questions, but we ran out of time, so we will answer those questions. Well, we can run a bit out. Yes. We've only got 2 or 3. We can run, because we did start a bit late, so I'm happy to, I'm happy to run a few minutes over. Okay, why does council think that the very standard street lighting in the form of straight modern sticks would be accepted by the Kirribilli residents? Why not replicate the beautiful old lamppost, which will reflect the historic aspects? Okay. We do have a standard light post for all of our village centres, and we do have to standardise sometimes as an organisation, because in terms of maintenance, we can't maintain 10 different styles, 10 different typologies of lights across the LGA. And this was happening before because we just can't keep suppliers and we can't keep spares for all of that. When they run out of stock or when they stop production of a particular item, we're then left with the problem of, well, we can't fix that particular light anymore because they don't make the globe, the luminaire, the stand. So the lights we've selected are selected for their longevity, but also their commonality. It doesn't mean that we can't do things to the lights that celebrate heritage in a different way. The lights that you're currently having, Kirribilli, the goosenecks, to be honest with you, they came out of the 1980s style for lights that was done in the 1980s. There's no historical reference to the current lights in Kirribilli to anything that's historic. For instance, that say you might see in the rocks, that is a copy of an old gas lamp style light that you would see in the rocks. But the rocks is a heritage listed area, and they do replicate the heritage lights of the period, which were old gas lamps in that suburb, in that part of Sydney. Yes, so that's it for now. Okay, look, but that obviously doesn't stop you from sending in your comments and to have your say on our website. We will finish tonight's session. I'm sure I'm going to see, Diana and I are going to see quite a lot of people on the 18th of October at the Streetscape, but we'll also see you face-to-face there at the Streetscape. We'll also see you face-to-face at the design workshop on the 8th of November. But of course, you can keep sending in your submissions right up until the 14th of November. So we hope that this session's been informative. Lastly, just one last thing is those comments that were not actual questions put on the chat, they will be treated as submissions as well. So thank you for that. It's feedback taken. Yeah. So thank you again, everyone, for your participation tonight. And we'll see you again shortly at one of the information sessions that we're having. So thank you. Thank you.